for anyone who remembers the name-calling that characterized the repartee between Little Marco Rubio and Donald "Small Hands" Trump during last year's Republican primary campaign, it is more than a little surprising to see them now celebrating a partnership. But Rubio's sudden transformation into a Trump loyalist during last week's questioning of James Comey by the Senate Intelligence Committee hinted that a deal had been struck between the two men. And so it was. Today in Miami, with Senator Rubio at his side, President Trump unveiled his much-anticipated review of Cuba policy. The venue chosen for the occasion was the Manuel Artime Theater, named after a late leader of Brigade 2506, the Cuban exile paramilitary group backed by the CIA, which led the failed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961. After that disaster, Artime participated in a number of other CIA-supported efforts against Fidel Castro, including an attempt to assassinate him. Last October, a week before the election, at the Bay of Pigs Museum, in Little Havana, Trump appeared before the Brigade's Veterans Association, which had given him its endorsement. He said, "The United States should not prop up the Castro regime economically and politically, as Obama has done and as Hillary Clinton plans to do. They don't know how to make a good deal, and they wouldn't know how to make a good deal if it was staring at them in the face." Trump didn't make clear what kind of a deal he would make instead, and it seems unlikely that he knew himself. Indeed, around that time, he was telling senior Obama administration officials that he was impressed with President Obama's policy, a historic breakthrough, dramatically unveiled in December 2014, after 2 years of secret negotiations with Raul Castro's government. Whatever Trump thought or said privately, he clearly wanted to make the right sort of noises to potential voters in Miami. Trump had pulled a similar maneuver before. In November 1999, when he first toyed with the idea of running for the presidency, Trump spoke to a crowd of Cuban Americans at an event in Miami hosted by the anti-Castro Cuban American National Foundation, and said that he would never do business in Cuba as long as Fidel Castro was in power. That wasn't true. Less than a year earlier, a party of Trump's consultants had traveled to Havana to look for investment opportunities, a violation of the restrictions of the U.S. trade embargo. Upon learning of Fidel Castro's death, on November 25, Trump, who had won the presidency 3 weeks earlier, took a harder line, saying, in a statement, "Though the tragedies, deaths and pain caused by Fidel Castro cannot be erased, our administration will do all it can to ensure the Cuban people can finally begin their journey toward prosperity and liberty." As with most initiatives of the Trump White House, the Cuba policy has already been widely leaked. The Miami Herald ran a story on Thursday, based on its reading of an 8-page document that it described as Trump's Cuba policy directive. In essence, it reintroduces restrictions on travel by Americans to Cuba and places new curbs on U.S. investments there. Its stated aim is to deny the Castro government, which controls a majority of business on the island, through a military holding company, easy access to American funds. The move will also likely curtail the numbers of Americans traveling to the island as well, by obliging them to provide proof that they are following the new rules. Under the U.S. trade embargo, which can only be lifted by an act of Congress, travel to Cuba for tourism is officially banned, but the Obama administration had relaxed the rules to permit American travelers to come and go under a report-yourself honor system. The new orders may well hurt the Castro government's cash flow, but they seem equally likely to dent the forward momentum of Cuba's nascent private sector. At the Artime Theater, Trump said that Cuba had not opened up enough under the Obama guidelines, and so he was canceling the previous administration's completely one-sided deal. America would enforce the trade embargo rather than seek to relax it, as Obama had done, and, Trump added, "We challenge Cuba to come to the table with a new agreement that is in the best interest of their people, of our people, and of Cuban Americans." The president then issued a series of demands that made his failure to ask anything similar of the Saudis during his trip to Riyadh several weeks ago all the more glaring, calling on Havana to end to the abuse of dissidents, release political prisoners, stop jailing innocent people, open yourselves up to political and economic freedoms. Senator Rubio has been taking credit for helping to draft the new directive, telling the Herald that he worked on it with input from Representative Mario Diaz-Balart. Diaz-Balart, whose district is in southern Florida, is a nephew of Fidel Castro's first wife, and, like his older brother Lincoln Diaz-Balart, who served 18 years in Congress, he is one of the Castro regime's most bitter opponents. Rubio said, "All the pressure comes from American business interests that go to Cuba, see the opportunities, and then come back here and lobby us to lift the embargo." I'm trying to reverse the dynamic. I'm trying to create a Cuban business sector that now goes to the Cuban government and pressures them to create changes. As with much else that Trump has done since assuming the presidency, his Cuban directive appears to be a deliberate attempt to dismantle Obama's legacy. Although there were Cubans, including the late Fidel Castro, who were skeptical of the sincerity of U.S. intentions, many others were elated at the possibilities promised by the Obama administration's rapprochement. Already, that policy has helped to speed up economic and cultural reforms in